Okay, so it is so great to see you all here. We're so glad you got the chance to visit campus today. And to those of you online, we're thrilled to have you as well. This is the classroom that our students come to and learn about anatomy and physiology and pulmonary and GI, and all of the lectures are done in this classroom. So I think it's great that you guys have the opportunity to be here. Back in my day, I'm an 04 alum. It was actually about the same room, but it was like all these awful chairs that were like then falling apart. I think they're about 20 or 30 years old at that point. So much nicer now. They did a big renovation several years ago. But we're thrilled to have you here today in Baltimore. Nice weather. Sorry about the smoke that I think is something that's affecting this whole area, unfortunately, but so glad to have you here. I'm going to go through preparing for a career in medicine. You're going to hear from a few of us today, kind of evolving from preparing for a career in medicine, from Dr. Martinez, like Ms. Green said, about our curriculum, and then Dr. Tom about kind of student life, and then our students as well. And we'll take some time for questions. So I've also looked at the questions that we've gotten online for those of you who are joining us virtually, and I'll try to incorporate some of those questions into my presentation, but a very common question we get is, what does a Maryland medical student look like? What does a successful matriculant look like? And that's not as easy a question as you would think, but we're going to try to cover it here. These are the 4 basic characteristics. And, no one is 25% each of these, like usually people have strength in one area or another, but these are the main characteristics of a University of Maryland medical student or a successful matriculant. Academic potential and scholarly activity. Medical school is hard. I don't think that's a surprising statement for any of you sitting here. You have all probably heard something similar to the analogy that if undergraduate is like trying to drink from a garden hose in terms of the amount of information you're getting on a day-to-day basis, medical school is like trying to drink from a fire hydrant. And that is a great analogy. It was true 20 years ago. It's true now. I think that it is just a lot. And we want to accept people who are going to have amazing bedside manners and be engaged in their community and understand about social determinants of health and all of it, maybe be policy advocates, all these other things we'll talk about. But at the end of the day, we also need to make sure that you are going to be successful in the pre-clerkship curriculum, that you'll be able to pass step. We don't think that the highest MCAT, like if you have an MCAT of 525, you're going to be a better doctor than if you have an MCAT of 512. But we worry that if you're below 500, that you might struggle, and that, we want to make sure that we're setting people up for success when we accept them to our medical school. Clinical exposure. We'll talk about this in detail. No one can really understand what it means to be a physician until you are. I'm hitting the microphone. That's probably bad for the people online, but no one can understand what it means to be a physician until you're actually doing it entirely. But we really want to make sure that our applicants have taken time to figure out that they actually want to be a doctor. I think saying you want to be a doctor when you grow up, that gets you lots of warm fuzzies back. There are a lot of reasons, family, social, all these reasons to think that you want to be a doctor. And it's cool, right? Like you see your pediatrician, you've seen what doctors do from early on. But at the end of the day, when it comes to taking care of really sick people or people who frequently aren't able or unwilling to follow the instructions and complicated patients in the hospital, doing that isn't for everyone. And you might be great at science and really like working with people, but there's so many different careers and not everyone is built to be a physician. I love my job, but it's just not for everyone. So we want to make sure that you've really taken the time to be at a physician's elbow and see what that patient-physician interaction is like, and make sure that's what you want to do. Because it is a lot of time, effort, money, sweat and tears, hopefully not blood, but it takes a lot of time to be a doctor. And we want to make sure that you've put in the time to figure out this is what you want to do. Dedication to service and community. Being a physician is a serving profession. A way you can start to develop that or demonstrate that this is what you're interested in and engaged in is to dedicate time to your service and community before you get to medical school. It is so important to meet and work with people who are from different backgrounds than you're from. No matter what your background is, you are going to be working very closely with patients and families during some of the most difficult, vulnerable times of their life who are from a totally different background than you are. And one of the ways to develop that empathy and that ability to put yourself in other people's shoes is to spend time serving your community, getting engaged with groups that are very different than whatever your background is. Interpersonal communication and a team player. I know all of you have heard about bedside manner and probably heard someone complain about a doctor with bad bedside manner, very happy with a doctor with good bedside manner. This makes all the difference. I can have the right answer for my asthma patients, but if I can't convince them that this is the right thing and kind of get them on board and work with them as part of the treatment team and convey that, then I'm not going to be successful. And this is so true whether or not you're a private practice doctor on your own in the community, or if you're running a team in the hospital, where often the teams can be 5, 10, 15 people, including pharmacists, bedside nurses, social work, people who case management, palliative care, all types of different people who are contributing to taking care of this patient. And as a physician, you're also the leader of that team, kind of de novo. So it's important that we see evidence that you have good interpersonal communication and that you are a team player and a leader. So in your campus community, get involved with student groups, leadership roles, teamwork. You don't have to start a new student organization. I feel like we've been seeing more and more of that, and it's great if you do, and that's something you're passionate about. But just in a couple of the programs that you're involved with, make sure it's something you enjoy. Make sure that you're taking some leadership roles in a couple of those areas to make a difference and demonstrate that teamwork and hopefully enjoy your time. Paid employment, I think that this is not required, but we also see this very positively. So we know that some people have to work through college, or some of you may have taken time off after college, and it counts too. If you were working at a McDonald's and you rose to shift manager, or they chose you to teach the new employees how to work the cash register, all of that shows that you're able to communicate important information, that people see you as a leader. So it certainly want you to get involved on campus and hear about those activities, but also paid employment, no matter what the area. You might also be a clinical research coordinator or a researcher, and you can certainly talk about that in all those different, or in this space, but it doesn't have to be medical or science. We want to hear about all your paid employment. I feel like my slides are out of order. No, there are just fewer of them than there should be. Okay, I'm going to focus on this slide because I don't know what happened, but so for the academic potential and scholarly activity, there are a lot of questions about this online, and I'm sure that you guys have a lot of questions here. We take a very wide range for MCATs. The range we took in previous years are 500 to 526, I believe. The average MCAT is 514. And again, we're looking at this for academic potential. So we just want to make sure that you can do the work, that we don't bring you here and you struggle through the USMLE, the board exams that you have to pass in order to be a physician. And as far as GPAs go, I would say that a science GPA of less than 3.2, we would consider at risk for not being successful with our curriculum. There were a lot of questions online, and certainly you guys will get the chance to ask questions, but if you had a rough undergraduate GPA for some reason and you take a strong post-bac and demonstrate that you can do the work, that's great. Like if you had, I think one question online was someone who had a poor undergraduate GPA, they became a nurse, and then they're doing a post-bac with very successfully, that's great. We just want to know that when you come here, you'll be able to do the work and be successful. As far as clinical exposure and understanding the physician role, I cannot emphasize this enough. I think it is so important, because I think the worst thing is someone who comes here to be a doctor, maybe you have all of the other things going on, but if you don't love what you do, being a physician is hard. There are lots of different things you can do with an MD, but it is pretty, not all consuming, but very, it takes a lot more dedication than most professions do in terms of the financial and time commitment. So we really want to make sure that we are taking people who have looked at what it means to be a physician and enjoy that. And what we mean by that is mostly working with physicians and patients together in the same space. So shadowing radiology, great. I love our chest radiologist, but also make sure that you're doing some shadowing with a family practice doctor or a surgeon and seeing patients in clinic. Same with anesthesia or surgery. Those are all great professions that we need excellent physicians in, but make sure that you're not just shadowing the anesthesiologist in the OR with an anesthetized patient, that you're getting into the pain clinic or doing pre-ops with them, and same with surgery. surgery clinics can be very busy and insightful, but make sure you are getting into that clinic and not just doing OR time. So that's shadowing. I know that finding shadowing opportunities can be hard. It was nearly impossible in 2020, but I think, things are definitely open. The way I recommend people do it is volunteer at a hospital or in a medical center. I think that way you get to meet some physicians, and then usually you can shadow them from there. I honestly think if you're someone who needs to make money, which many of us were and are, scribing is a fantastic opportunity. That way you're at a physician's elbow day in and day out. You get to know them, you get to know, I think, a lot. And even if you're shadowing, I'd ask about this, but work-life balance, as a scribe, you're there when the school calls because their kid got hit in the head at the playground or whatever. You're there and kind of on a day in and day out basis. So I think scribing is a great opportunity to shadow, and that can be ER, primary care, ortho. Again, those are the ones that we see pretty frequently, dermatology, but we just want to make sure that you're with a physician who's taking care of patients. Translating. So if that's a skill you have, that is not a skill I have, but if that's a skill you have and you can be a translator, go get certified. That's another great opportunity to be at a physician's elbow and watch them interact with patients and witness that patient-physician relationship. So those are kind of the main things that we see for shadowing. I think since the pandemic, we have seen a lot of virtual shadowing, which can be kind of two different flavors. One flavor is that there's a physician who kind of walks you through a case and a group of people online and tells you about their day-to-day life and what they like and what some of their struggles might be as a physician. And that's great. We want to hear about that, especially if that contributed to your interest in being a physician. But I wouldn't count that as the clinical exposure shadowing that you can get online as well. So there's also telemedicine opportunities where you're with the physician and the patient in a Zoom room or some equivalent, kind of seeing that physician interact with the patients interact. And that is more clinical shadowing in a virtual space. So the other thing I'll say before I get into each of these different areas is, especially if you haven't started applying yet. I am not a big journaler, but I really want to encourage you to just keep a Word document or something in your notes app. With every time you shadow or do something else that we talk about, just write a little reflection about what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, and how you think this contributes or not to your motivation for medicine. And you will love yourself 2 years later when you're filling out your AMCAS if you've had a little reflection about it each time. I think that can be very helpful. So dedication to service and community, again, getting out there, working with people who are from different backgrounds than you. This does not have to be clinical. Sometimes it is. So if you're volunteering in a hospital, that's fantastic. And we want to hear about that, but this is also Habitat for Humanity, working in shelter for people who are unhomed, doing international trips, getting exposed to different cultures and languages and people in that way. So any sort of service or community engagement, we're really looking for how this contributes to your interest for medical school. So when you fill out your AMCAS and you're going through and talking about each of your experiences, then in your personal statement, in your essay, it's going to be so much about how you write about your experiences. So when you're going through these service and community opportunities, really think of it through a lens of how does this contribute or motivate me to spend the time, energy, money to be a physician, and kind of how that's changing your lens, how that contributes to your empathy for people who are different than you. Interpersonal communication, team player. I think a lot of this is done through paid employment, school opportunity, or school organizations where you're getting out there, something you're passionate about. And this doesn't, we want to see service and community, but it can also be a film interest group or, something that's a dance. We've seen a lot of different people with dance, sports, the arts, anything that you're really engaged and passionate about. We want to know that about you, because you need to be well-rounded to be a good physician. And that comes into the interpersonal communication. Okay, so the application process, the primary application is through AMCAS, and that's how you apply to all the schools in the country. That's where you describe your experiences and you fill out your personal statement. And this is where, if you've kept a Word document or a notes thing about all of your different activities, it'll be so much easier for you. You send your transcripts into AMCAS and they kind of normalize them, and your letters of recommendation. So all of that goes into your primary application, the secondary application, and then you have interviews, which here we have remote interviews still, and we're having in-person campus visits. So I'll go through, no, I will go through the details of each of those. I'm sorry, I changed the slides and clearly didn't add all the ones that I usually use. So for the primary application, this is so important on how you write about things. So you can see a different experience, or we talk about shadowing. People want to know numbers for community service all the time. So if you say, I did Habitat for Humanity for 1,000 hours, I went, I built houses, I made people's lives better, and that's your entire reflection. That's not as helpful as someone who maybe did 100 hours and can talk well about what their motivation was to engage with Habitat for Humanity, what some lessons learned were, what some personal interactions are. We really want to hear much more about your reflections on those activities than just kind of the hours and the statements about what you did. So how you describe those activities matters. We'll get into the personal statements in the smaller groups later today, but this is really just tell us a story about how you decided to become a physician. I think creative writing is a thing. I am not a great writer. Some people are excellent writers, and that's wonderful, but you don't need to be an exceptional creative writer to put together a very solid personal statement. And I will say, you're not looking to stand out and be totally different than the group. That can go either way, depending on how that works. What you are looking to do is just tell your story, tell us about your motivation, be sincere, and kind of let us know who you are and what motivated you to become a physician. Transcripts, I think, are kind of self-explanatory. We get all of your undergraduate, and then if you've done any graduate school transcripts, and then letters of recommendation. These, I think, are also a source of stress for people. One thing I would recommend is if you aren't applying this year, so if you're a little bit earlier in your process, make sure you get to know some of your science professors well. I'm a Virginia Tech grad, so I had big classes, but make sure you're going to the office hours of at least one or two professors that you admire, that maybe have an interest similar to yours, volunteer in their lab, get to know someone well so that at the end of your time in school, and this, whether or not you decide to apply to medical school, I think this is a great benefit. When you get to the end of school or college, you have a handful of professors that can write you a really insightful personal letter, not they showed up to my organic chemistry class and they got an A. That's great. Like, no, we want to hear more about problem solving, overcoming obstacles or whatever it is that you kind of work through with that professor. So make sure you get a couple of professors that you get to know well, that can write you a letter of recommendation. We also love to see letter of recommendations from physicians you've shadowed or clinical experiences you've had, or if you've been very involved with one community service. If there's one community service group that you're kind of involved with more than the others, maybe the faculty advisor, or if you're out of school, then the person who's involved with that. So anyone who can kind of speak to why they think you should be a physician and tell us more about you so we get a sense of who you are. Our secondary application asks for your photo and has some follow-up questions similar to what you have on your primary application. So we ask about what your important community service is, what your most kind of impactful clinical experience was, and everything you talk about should be on your AMCAS. So very rarely did you do something between finishing your AMCAS and starting your secondary that's brand new. So we expect to have seen it on your AMCAS. What we don't want is to see copy and pasting just the same story from your personal statement or your AMCAS. This is your opportunity to give us another insight, more of an idea about what has motivated you to be a physician and why you really want this. I will say we know that getting into medical school is hard. There are a lot of reapplicants. The copy and paste go for the same thing. So if you're reapplying, we get it. We look at your application very thoroughly, just like we did before, but we also look back to make sure you didn't just resubmit the same application. We want to see people that are dedicated and have reworked their application, built on their experiences over their year or years off, and we don't want to see cutting and pasting from the year before. So that's for your secondary application. For your interviews, so excuse me, We are still doing remote interviews. We do 2 one-on-one interviews. Everyone interviews with at least one faculty member, and then the other interview is a faculty member or student. It's about a 40-minute conversation. Everything on your application is kind of game for discussion. And again, we're really getting a sense of who you are, your communication skills, your ability to interact and talk about the different things you're involved with, and build out your application even more. Talk about why you're passionate about being a physician, why you really enjoyed that community service. I think some people, it's so easy, and I'm a checkbox person, to kind of get focused on, I need to do service, and I need to do clinical experience, and I need to do research, and kind of check the boxes through. And that comes out sometimes on the application, but often during the interview, if someone has taken that approach. Like, we want people who've done things they loved. So that those interviews are one-on-one. I strongly recommend that you review your application before every interview. It can be hard. You may have filled out your application in May or June, and now you're interviewing in November, December, January. So make sure you review your application and you know what content is on there. That gets to the most important point that I'm going to say here today. So I want everyone, if you remember nothing else, remember that when you apply to medical school, apply early. This is true for every single institution. I think it is very, very true for us, though. We get so many phenomenal applicants that eventually we run out of interview spots. So apply early. And what early means is putting in your AMCAS as soon as you can, and then getting your secondary in July or August. We certainly keep looking at secondaries and review, and we continue to add people to a wait list for interviews. But so many people I see with phenomenal applications who put it in November, your chance of getting an interview is just not zero, but it's just lower. You are giving yourself the best chance of being a successful applicant if you apply early. So again, if you remembered nothing today, apply early, okay? That is so important. And we're not the only school with that system. The vast majority of schools have a rolling admissions program, and for any of those, applying early is going to be beneficial. We're actually posting ours shortly. Many schools have their secondary questions online on their websites. And none of them are shocking out of the blue. So I think just make sure that you spend some time to get those prepared and apply early. The other thing I'm going to say, I went through this kind of whole bit, and I didn't mention research at all. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our dual degrees and our research requirements. So for us, MD only, no research is required. We accept people every year who have not done any research at all. I will say that if you're planning to apply to medical school and you're not applying in this session, I would probably try to get some research experience, just because while we do not require research at all, many institutions do. So I think that it's a valuable experience. This is very different for our MD Masters and MD PhD. So if you're interested in MD Masters or MD PhD, especially the MD PhD, you should have significant research, some publications, be able to talk about your research. And that research shouldn't be volunteering in a lab, kind of, washing the glassware and doing one assay. It should be a research project that you've contributed from an intellectual point of view, and be able to talk through that program. So we do not require research unless you're applying to dual degree, but I think that it's a great experience. And it goes along with everything I've said, that after, if you do a summer research project after your junior year, sit down and just write what your thoughts were about that, what you liked about it, what you didn't, and what you learned from it. So I think that is a very valuable experience as well. These are just some stats on our class of 2026. So we're very proud of these. We've worked very hard to get our stats to reflect the population of Maryland and the patients we're serving. 30% of our students are underrepresented in medicine. 62% are students of color. 19% identified as part of the LGBTQ community. 62% women, and we've run here since I was a student, I think. So, and then 71% in state, which is about where we run. We don't have a minimum or maximum percent in state, but we usually run around 70-75%. And then the match rate is after you get all the way through medical school and you match into residency, we do extremely well in the match, and we have a very high match rate. So we're so glad you're here in Baltimore. Take some time to, well, you'll have the tour today, and I hope you get some time to explore. I love it here. I lived in the city till I have kids, and now I just live a little south of the city. We have the Ravens here, which are a great football team. The Orioles are awesome this year too, which is a lot of fun. So we've made it to some of those games. So it's a great place to be. And our campus is beautiful. This is a pool on the 4th floor, which is just lovely. Our gym is excellent and has yoga classes and kickboxing and all the different things. So just a great campus as well that you'll hear more from the students. And this is our contact information. I think Dr. Casada has some questions, and you guys are welcome to ask some questions as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Robinette. Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's great to see all of you in here, all of your beautiful faces, and good morning and welcome to everyone joining us on Zoom as well. I think Dr. Robinette covered a lot of content, and we know that there's probably a lot of questions. We're excited to have this, our format that we're doing now with the breakout sessions. So like you can kind of think through, plan ahead where you want to be spending your time and hopefully be asking those pertinent questions. We did have some that came in ahead of time online. So I think some of these already got answered actually in Dr. Robinette's presentation, but just to bring the point home, since folks did ask about this, yes, the MCAT is required still. And I mean, that there's maybe 3 or so medical schools that may not be requiring that this year, but we are not one of them. There are 170 plus medical schools in the country. So the vast majority are still requiring that. There were a lot of questions asking, and maybe some of you were thinking about doing this in the breakouts later. I have this GPA and this MCAT. What are my chances to get in at Maryland? And the reality is when you apply and that application comes to us, your application is about a 25 to 30 page document that is full and rich with information that you've provided, right? About your experiences that your letter writers are sharing in support of your application. We sit down and go page by page through that whole application. As you can imagine, your GPA and your MCAT takes up about this much space in your whole application. I can't tell anybody based on their GPA or MCAT score if you are, a competitive applicant for Maryland, because we have people who may or may not be all across the spectrum of both GPA and MCAT. So hopefully Dr. Robinette's presentation really kind of gave you a sense of how, what are those things that we are looking for in the application. But again, we can get much more granular into those questions when we meet in the breakout room. So without further ado, and we're gonna keep moving things along so we can stay on time. And I look forward to getting to interact with many of you. I am going to invite our next set of presenters, or do you want to do that? Oh, okay. Actually, I will ask Ms. Kareem to help get the slide set up while I invite our next wonderful set of presenters, Dr. Martinez and Dr. Tom. Dr. Martinez is our Associate Dean for Medical Education and Student Experience. He's also actually he's double board certified in emergency medicine and internal medicine. Personally, I think internal medicine is the best, but he mostly practices emergency medicine, which is pretty awesome. And then also Dr. Tom is our Associate Dean for Student Affairs. And she is also a board certified specialist in infectious diseases and is an epidemiology guru and expert. So anyway, I'm excited for you all to hear and learn from both of them. Take it away, Dr. Martinez.
It's not often Dr. Quezada gets something wrong in public, but just kidding. So anyway, it's nice to see everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about the curriculum, and then I'm going to pass it over to my friend and colleague, Dr. Carrie Tom, who's going to talk about the Student Affairs Office and its role in your future lives here as medical students. So many of you have heard that we changed our curriculum a couple of years ago. We launched our brand new curriculum in August of 2020. which was, if you remember back to 2020, right smack in the middle of COVID. So that was a great way to launch a curricular change. But our new curriculum is called the Renaissance Curriculum. And we are really looking to develop Renaissance physicians. So if you remember back to the definition of the Renaissance man or woman back in the day, that was somebody that was capable in many aspects of life, not just in one thing. And we really think that our physicians, when they graduate from this medical school, and we actually have some data to prove it, are really awesome in lots of different facets, including their own, sort of personal self of being. So our Renaissance curriculum is really the biggest change was our pre-clerkship curriculum, which you think of as kind of the first part of medical school where you're in the classroom and you're learning, sort of from books and things like that. So we've shortened that up quite a bit, a few months, and I'll show you the schematic here a little bit. And the benefit of shortening it is that you can get into the clinical realm a little bit earlier. And so you can get more clinical experience, which is what you're really all here to do, right? Is to see patients and learn from other physicians. And this helps you to decide what you want to do after medical school, because I know you're all focused on getting into medical school, but there's many other steps after you get to medical school. You actually have to figure out what type of physician you want to be. And that's a challenging decision. Even more challenging than what medical school you want to go to. So we get you into the clinical realm earlier so you can see lots of different things and meet lots of different people and finally decide what kind of physician that you want to be, and then make yourself competitive to achieve that, because it's hard to get into medical school right now, and it's hard to get into residency programs right now. Dr. Tom's office does an incredible job of shepherding people through that process and getting them to be successful in the match. But you can help yourselves by making informed decisions and then making yourself competitive as well. And we talk to you a lot about that while you're here. And then finally, on the back end, we really want to make that clinical phase really useful, because residency programs expect that when you come to residency on day one, you know what you're doing to a certain extent, right? I mean, they're there to teach you stuff, but they want you to know stuff when you get there, because that very first day, your pager or your phone goes off and all of a sudden you're the doctor. And there's not a lot of time for hand-holding. And so we try to make that back end of medical school really useful to you all so that you can hit the ground running and really excel. What are our goals? It's always good when you start a new curriculum to decide what your goals are. Well, for about 200 and some years, we've produced excellent clinicians here in Baltimore, and we wanted to make sure that we continue to do that. And now more than ever in medicine, it's important that our graduates are lifelong learners and critical thinkers, because medicine evolves at just a massive pace of speed. And if you're not always learning, then you're falling behind. And so we need to teach you those skills, most of which you've already developed. We need to help you hone those skills to be able to be successful physicians for a long and fruitful career. But at the same point, you can be the best technical clinician in the world, but if you can't connect with your patients, if you can't comfort them in their times of care, you're not a good doctor. All right. So we want to make sure that you don't lose that piece of yourself that Dr. Quezada and Dr. Robinette are looking for in your application, that humanism and professionalism. We want to make sure to nurture that while you're here as well. And again, as I mentioned, when you get to residency, you got to be prepared for real world practice. And so we're going to make sure that that happens while you're here. So this is our schematic of what the pre-clerkship phase looks like. So you can see that it starts with this little yellow block called Introduction to Medical School, which lots of people call an orientation, but it's really much more than that. That's really where you learn about your classmates, you learn about the environment that you're going to be in for the next 4 years. And we really have a lot of important concepts in that very first week. And then we start with this foundations block, which is a pass-fail block. And the foundations block is really designed to help get everybody to the same threshold, whether you are coming straight from college and you were a biochemistry major, or you were coming from 4 years as a backpacker in Europe and you were an English major. We want to get you all to the same level of knowledge and comfort with the pace of medical school. So that's the foundations block. And then we get into these systems blocks. And most of them look pretty self-explanatory. And a couple of things I just want to point out to you here is that we do still have a summer break after that first year, which is where a lot of our students will start doing research during that summer, but also do some clinical exploring, and very importantly, recharge their batteries after year one, because it's a busy year. And then we come back and we get into some of the meatier things like cardiovascular, renal, and pulmonary. Those sound kind of important, right? So we do that, and then we end around March, and that gives you then a lot of time to prepare for that step one exam that we'll talk about in a second, and then get into clerkships a little bit earlier than we used to in our old curriculum. So as you look at the pre-clerkship phase, we talked about a few of these things already, but I want to highlight as we come down here, the one in blue. So as you think about, we're learning about different systems like cardiovascular, renal, and pulmonary, but there's lots of things that weave throughout, right? So things like humanism, professionalism, business of medicine, they don't fit nicely into a block. So we try to weave those through lots of different blocks there as well. When we redesigned our curriculum, we decided that we were not going to completely do away with lectures. I know that some schools have done that. University of Vermont, for one, does no actual lectures, in-person lectures. They do a lot of active learning. And we decided we wanted to do a lot of active learning as well, but we were going to maintain our lectures in addition. So we focused on making those lectures as high quality as possible and trying to fit the content into the amount of time rather than having, sort of a designated block where every lecture has to be the exact same amount of time. Some concepts need longer and some concepts need shorter. So let's not stretch those into arbitrary blocks of time or jam them down into arbitrary blocks of time. And then we also want to make sure that when you're learning stuff in the first 2 years, that you know how it's going to relate to the patients you care for at the end, right? So it's sometimes hard to figure out how, a biochemistry concept is going to be pertinent to you in patient care. And so we really try to bring in clinical relevance for some of those things to help you make those connections, because that's how you learn better. All right. And then I mentioned that the foundations block is pass-fail. The bookend at the end of the pre-clerkship phase called multi-system is a course that helps you integrate all the concepts you've learned, and that's also pass-fail. So what does a typical day look like here at the University of Maryland School of Medicine? Well, I mentioned we do have some lectures, right? So this is the actual lecture hall that you'll be sitting in. So you'll be learning in this lecture hall, but a lot of your learning will then be really sort of expanded on and solidified in a room that looks like this. And I see some of you College Parkers chuckling because you recognize this room. And I will admit that when you go upstairs for lunch, you'll see the read rooms that we borrowed that design from the University of Maryland College Park. So it'll look very familiar to you Terps that come upstairs. But we think this is really important. So our old small group rooms were a number of small rooms, and they were all built around a central island that had there was like sinks and laboratory equipment and stuff in there, and all the students faced away from the instructor. So it was the opposite of collaborative. So now it's two big, beautiful rooms with lots of round tables where students can learn from each other. There's technology on the walls, there's whiteboards, all sorts of great stuff. It's just a great learning space. And we are still a school that does in-person anatomical dissection. So we've done that for, I think, 210 out of our 211 years, with the one exception being the first year of the Renaissance curriculum, which was COVID, where we actually had to do virtual dissection. But we're back to doing in-person dissection. And actually, we're renovating our anatomy lab for the first time since the 1960s. So there'll be a brand new lab here in just under a year. There's lots of important milestones. I think Dr. Tom's going to talk about a couple of these milestones, but one of the big ones is at the end of that very first week of medical school, introduction to medical school, is the white coat ceremony. We really moved this up in the new curriculum so that you get this almost as soon as you get here, because you're going to start seeing patients in week 2 of medical school. So here's Dr. Quezada putting a white coat on one of our brand new students, I think 2 years ago, maybe. Then before you know it, you're out of the classroom, you're out of the collaborative learning spaces, and you are in the hospital. You are wearing the world famous shock trauma pink scrubs. You are doing things with your hands on actual patients, with actual patients, and with actual physicians. This happens very quickly. And then before you know it, it's hard to believe as you're sitting here thinking about applying to medical school, but when you get in, the days go by in a blur, and next thing you know, you're graduating and people are calling you doctor on the streets. So let's talk about a couple of the other parts of medical school. So unless you've been living under a rock or you just decided that you're going to be a doctor yesterday, you probably know that the step 1 exam went pass-fail a couple of years ago. All right, so that's been a big change in the life of our medical students. Step 1 is a really important milestone for the students, right? So it's sort of like the ultimate end of term final exam, right? Where you have to pass that to keep moving on through medical school. And it really does encompass pretty much everything that you've learned in the first 20 months of medical school. One of the nice things about the Renaissance curriculum is that we give students a little bit more flexibility than in the old curriculum to decide how long you need for step 1 prep, right? So many of our students will take about 6 weeks, but students can take as little as 2 weeks, and some students will take up to 10 weeks to study for step 1. So each person, and you're not getting behind if you do that. We have flexible entry dates into the clinical curriculum. With step 1 going pass-fail, a lot of residency program directors have said, well, there's another exam that students take before they apply to residency called step 2, and that still has a score on it. So we should look at that score. And so I just wanted to show you our last group of scores. You can see that in 2022-23, there's only 58 students that tested. That's because this is just an interim report. They haven't released the final report yet for that academic year. But you can see that our school's pass rate is anywhere from 99 to 100%. Our students are doing really well. And the national mean is 245, and our school mean has been 245. And we've been having lots of scores, actually quite well above that lately. So our school does a really good job preparing you for your step exams. Just a couple of words. We talked about these threads a little bit. I've named some of them there for you so that you can see them. We also have these longitudinal electives. So many of you may decide that you want to do a little bit of a concentration in something when you come. So if you think of medical school as being your major, like in college, your undergraduate major, one of these might be your medical school minor, sort of think of it that way. So you might do medical Spanish, for instance, as a longitudinal elective, or the humanism symposium, or one of these other wonderful electives. One that we just added last year is the point of care ultrasound elective. So this thing that has a little butterfly on it is actually an ultrasound probe and ultrasound machine all built into one, and it hooks right into your eye device, and you can take it into to the bedside of a patient, and you don't have to lug in a big cart-sized ultrasound machine anymore. So through a philanthropic donation, we got 30 of these probes, and so we have a cohort of 30 students that are learning from first year of medical school how to use these ultrasounds, and by the time they graduate, they'll be able to look at all sorts of cool things like eyeballs and gallbladders and things like that. So cool stuff. As you move on to the clinical and advanced clinical phases, you'll do some core clerkships. You'll do things called sub-internships, which are a little bit more primary care of your own patient. I don't mean primary care, but I mean that you are the primary caregiver for patients. So a little bit more responsibility. We have emergency medicine clerkships because it's so awesome. We have anesthesia requirements. And then again, to sort of prepare you before you graduate, we do a block called Transition to Residency, which is in April of your 4th year. And it really is the nuts and bolts of things that you're going to want to need to know, that you are going to need to know and want to know on day 1 of your residency program. So, what do I do if somebody calls me that my patient's potassium is 1.8? How do I fix that, right? Well, we'll teach you in this. So I know you're worried at this point about getting into medical school, but as I mentioned, at some point, you're going to get out of medical school and you're going to want to match into your next specialty. So these are the specialties that in the class of 2023 matched into. So you can see probably at every medical school around the country, internal medicine is the biggest specialty because it's the gateway to a lot of other things. If you want to be a cardiologist or a gastroenterologist or a pulmonologist, you typically go through internal medicine first. So that's typically the biggest specialty. But you can see some of the other ones like anesthesia, surgery, OB, peds, emergency medicine, et cetera. All right, so I know that as much as I'd love for all of you to come here, many of you are going to be deciding between here and other places. So what can we do for you? Well, one thing that we have lots of data from residency program directors to prove is that our graduates are consistently rated as excellent by their residency directors, right? So we have a very good track record of producing excellent clinicians. And so residency programs, when it comes down to a Maryland student and a student from somewhere else that are somewhat equivalent, they're like, you know what? Maryland's got a great track record. I know they're going to be a great resident. Let me pick the Maryland student. Our wonderful Office of Student Affairs, who you're going to hear about next, has won not just regional, but national mentoring awards. So they're going to be very, very important people in your lives while you're in medical school, and our office is phenomenal. And they write this summative evaluation at the end called the Medical Student Performance Evaluation, or MSPE, which is a big part of your residency program application. And our MSPE is universally thought to be the gold standard for MSPEs around the country. So they do a great job with all of that. I mentioned that we want you to graduate and be wonderful, humanistic, professional clinicians. You can't do that if you're not well. So in medical school, you've probably heard this phrase, there's light at the end of the tunnel, right? We are working towards the goal of there not being a tunnel anymore. It's aspirational, I know, but we want medical school to be an experience where it's not, put your head down and struggle through at the expense of your own personal wellness. All right, we're very committed to that goal. We've made lots of initiatives like the Wellness Hub, the peer networks, people like the wonderful Dr. John Allen in the Office of Student Affairs, who is dedicated to our students' wellness among all of the other faculty members as well. So we really want to try to get rid of that tunnel mentality as best as we can. One of the other things that we've done to try to promote wellness is something called the House Advisory System. So it's 4 houses, each led by a senior faculty member, and then there's 8 core faculty members in each house, each of whom has a cohort of students from the first year, second year, third year, and fourth year class. Yes, it sounds very Harry Potterish, right? But it's great. They get mentoring from other students in the group as well as their core faculty members. And then we do house events and you do competitions between the houses. So there's the Lois Young Thomas house. And I'm just going to scroll through these so you can see, these are the specialties of the mentors within those houses. So it's, sort of built-in specialty exploration at the same time. Dr. Deb Stein, who's the head of that house, is a world-renowned trauma surgeon. So getting to know her on a personal level is really incredible, right? Mario Garcia Palmieri House is chaired by the chair of surgery here, Dr. Christine Law. You can see their specialty there. Dr. Brian Brown, who's my chairperson in emergency medicine, is the chair of the Julius Friedenwald House. And then the Eva Dodge House is Dr. Marian Joku from anesthesia and her wonderful faculty mentors. And what sort of things do? They assist students with mentoring. They allow them to develop collegial relationships with other people. And they really improve the cohesiveness of the school as a whole. So it's not just, here's the first year class, here's the second year class, third year class, the fourth year class, but we intersperse the people through these events and help them to meet people outside of their own class through things like hanging out in our beautiful house rooms with other students from other classes, going out to dinner with their faculty mentors, meeting them for coffee in the MSTF atrium, doing escape rooms with their faculty mentors, and then doing community service things. So raising money for Puerto Rico. These are boxes of socks that they donated to the homeless population of Baltimore, which is the most requested unit of clothing in homeless shelters, is actually socks. And so we donated a whole truckload full of that. And that was because the whole student body got together and raised money to buy socks. So I think it's really incredible what people do. I think actually we're going to go to Dr. Tom next, and then we'll take questions after that.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here in person and to get to see you. Hopefully, I'll be able to stick around for some of the questions and see some of y'all at lunch too. So really looking forward to getting to know you. Oh, it's up here. And also hi to everyone on Zoom. So glad so many people could come and learn about our experience here at University of Maryland School of Medicine. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna help her. I know, but we almost got it. Okay, I'm just gonna click. I know it's like it's a ghost mouse. Okay. Yay. All right, we did it. So as previously mentioned, my name is Carrie Tom. I am in the Office of Student Affairs as your Associate Dean. In a few slides and in a few minutes, you'll get to meet some of the other folks that work in our office. Already mentioned, I'm an infectious disease physician and also an internal medicine physician, which is at least 3 times better than EM because we have at least that much more in the clinical rotations for you to have the opportunity to experience. First generation medical student, so I'll try to weave my experience as that into some of what I have to say here today. So our office in the Office of Student Affairs, what is it that we do? We are literally, our whole purpose is to be here in support of you. Dr. Martinez talked a lot about achieving your academic goals, but also achieving being part of the community, welcoming you into this community, being achieving goals in both personal and professional life as well. And that's what we're here in support of. We literally want to see you achieve the best versions of yourself as a future physician, as a professional, as a human being. And all that work is for you to do, but we're here to help give the guidance, the support, the mentorship, and help really equalize everybody so you all have the similar and same opportunities. It's certainly not just me. Dr. Martinez gave a shout out that we've won some national awards for mentorship. I also want to point out that so has he. Last year, he won the national award for as a mentor. And we really work all closely together in undergraduate medical education, from admissions to education to us in student affairs, to be that support. Specifically in our office, we have 5 deans for student affairs. You briefly met Dr. Allen via picture. He works a lot with our students on wellness. We have Dr. Flaherty, who also has an interest in personal growth and wellness, and Dr. Lemos, who works with our dual degree students, as well as general advising. And I just want to do a quick shout out and let her come up and introduce herself since she was able to join us today. This is Dr. Kristen Rivas, who's an amazing family medicine physician. You'll get to know her in multiple capacities. But in our office, she works as our assistant dean for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Good morning, everyone. As Dr. Tom said, my name is Kristen Rivas, a family doctor by trade. I'm the family medicine residency program director, as well as the assistant dean for student diversity and inclusion. Very excited to see you all here. A little like snippet of my role is to help our diverse student body in really any way, shape, or form necessary. Whether that is advising, whether that is I just need someone to talk to, given my experience as a student from a minoritized or otherwise marginalized background, or not. I also am the co-faculty advisor for the Student Diversity Council with Dr. Quezada, and that is a council of students that help to lead many of our affinity groups. So we try to help to have those students have a voice and oftentimes provide either advising to us or to help bring activities together to, again, support our diverse group of students. I hope that you all have a great day.
Thanks, Dr. Rivas, for being here and for giving that brief introduction. In addition to us as faculty, we also have 7 administrative staff members that help with all of these administrative things that you see here. As a team, we are here to provide guidance, assistance, and these administrative services. We take very seriously our role as advocates for you. We sit on both campus and school committees with specifically that in mind, to be advocates for individual students and students as a whole, and also work obviously as a liaison between the students and the overall administration, again, with the advocacy piece in mind. Dr. Martinez showed the same slide, and I reframed it a little bit again with the ideas of how we can help you beyond simply the academic support in achieving that best, achieving your personal and professional goals and becoming that best version of you that we know you want to be. He already mentioned that you all will go on to become amazing clinical physicians, rated highly by your program directors, and we know for sure by future patients and colleagues as you go out into your future practices. And a big goal, obviously, we don't want to shepherd you too quickly. We want you to enjoy this experience of medical school, but obviously your end result is to be a physician. And in order to get there, your next step after medical school is to get you to your desired residency. And we start working on that immediately through that mentorship and helping you figure out which specialties you might be interested in, what is the right specialty path for you, but also importantly, what type of physician do you want to be? What are your values and your goals and your own personal brand and mission, and how that all comes together in your residency application process as well. So here's some of the more specifics on specifically what we do in OSA with students to help provide that support. Again, we start right away with a one-to-one meeting with one of us in student affairs right in usually October, November timeframe, so that we can start talking about career advising, welcoming you into the SOM community, and providing you with opportunities that might fit your goals and interests. We use a career advising system that is provided by the UMSOM, and then we also have our own spin on it as well. We are, one piece of many, many different layers of mentorship, and Dr. Martinez also talked about the house advising system. Each one of us in OSA is involved in that as well. Again, we liaise with some campus services. We also are the office that helps with financial aid, identifying and advertising for scholarships and fellowship opportunities. We're also the office that helps you with scheduling, so both the nuts and bolts of it. But when you start to get into your advanced clinical phases, you move away from a standardized set of clinical rotations or coursework into what do you want to do, right? Again, achieving your own personal goals and mission, and we help you to develop that schedule of what that might look like best for you, and then help you to shepherd you through that residency application process, and a big part of that is preparing the MSPE. So Dr. Martinez talked a lot about the day-to-day of the medical school life. I just want to talk very broadly about it. And, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. I put it in quotes. I'm sure many of you have heard before. Medical school is hard. And in some ways, we can't get around that too much, right? I mean, there is a lot of material to learn. And that presents a challenge for each of you to figure out how to achieve those academic goals. But at the same time, it can also be rewarding and fulfilling, and it should be. We shouldn't be in the tunnel. We should be in that lovely atrium that Dr. Martinez shared for you. And I think that is where we try from day one to create that atmosphere and that culture to really think about again, that whole person, that whole student, and what goals you want to achieve. This is a service profession, so many of you came in with that goal in mind. So being involved clinically early on, whether it's through coursework or through service opportunities, is really important. And being able to have that self-discovery and growth to amplify both the best. And sometimes when you hit challenges, it also amplifies some of the worst in each of us. With that in mind, thinking back to my own experience as a first-generation medical student, one of the things that I did was thought, I need to achieve this and show everybody that I deserve to be here. And I need to do this on my own merit, and I need to be the best I can possibly be. And I did that well sometimes, and probably pretty poorly at other times. But looking back, one of my biggest regrets in medical school is that I did not seek out resources and help where I could have. And I see this over and over again with our students as well. You all are incredible. I know that because you're here and even thinking about going to medical school. You're bright, you're smart, you're hardworking. You have the capacity to do this, but yet we have all these resources in place for a reason. We want to see you succeed, and there is no shame in reaching out and utilizing some of these resources. And so I just want to encourage you all to think about how you're a part of that community and how these resources are meant for every single one of you. So please utilize these as you go through. And similarly, even if you feel like you don't need resources, reach out to faculty, form relationships and bonds. Those can be some of your most fulfilling experiences in medical school and in your future career as you develop those relationships. I won't spend a ton of time talking about wellness, even though it's super important because Dr. Martinez already talked about this, but this is a huge, huge goal and a huge mission for us. And we do this again by helping you achieve your own personal goals. So some of the specifics relative to what I keep talking about is the recent development of a personal growth and the recent creation, I guess, of a personal growth and development program by several of our faculty members. We help support academic success, scholarship and research opportunities, provide service opportunities, help a focus on humanities, leadership, social justice, and DEI. And some examples of some of the services that we provide within this are we have a series of OSA Insider podcasts, which are very well ascribed to. In fact, now you could probably go to our website and download, and you probably will find some things of interest for you to listen to. These tend to resonate with students at various times of their career and can talk about how to pick a future specialty, how to think about your own brand and your own mission. Those have been of value. The elective courses that Dr. Martinez talked about, we have a very robust student government and student organization system that allows students to become involved in this community again, either at the leadership level or by being a member or participant of these groups, a series of micro-credential courses as well. So I wanted to provide a little bit more specific of an example. So when we sit down with a student and a student goes through the exercise to say, you know, here are some of my core values, here are some of the things that I want to achieve, or my mission or my vision. I just picked 2 examples. We probably have a list of 20 or 30 that could cover other things here, like the humanities, like scholarship and research, but I picked 2. And when we sit down, this is certainly not an inclusive list, but just an example list of ways you could get involved, right? So if your mission is thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you might consider some of the pre-clerkship electives like the social justice track or the medical Spanish track. We have many student organizations and student groups that have this as their mission, like White Coats for Black Lives, SNMA, LSMA, the LGBTQ health, or Women in Medicine and Women in Surgery, and leadership positions. It's such an important role of the admissions committee, as you heard from Dr. Robinette and Dr. Quezada earlier, to have our class look like the population that we treat, and achieving those DEI goals through participation in the admission committee. And Dr. Rivas also talked about Student Diversity Council. I won't go through each of the ones on leadership here, but you can see many opportunities both for learning leadership skills, participating in a leadership capacity through national student organizations, or leadership within our own institution and service to the community. A huge part of what we do, and one of the most fun things that we do each year, is to help you celebrate these incredible milestones, starting from welcoming you into this profession by helping you to don your first white coat at the white coat ceremony, which will occur in August, right the first week that you attend as a medical student, to elevating your professionalism at the student clinician ceremony as you begin to take care of patients in the 3rd year. And then all the way through to match day and graduation in your senior year, as we get to see each of you achieve those goals that you've worked so hard for all of this time. And it's already been pointed out that our students have great success in the match. I meant to include the updated 2023, but that's okay. This is really just to sort of give you a distribution of the places our students match, and you can really see that it occurs all throughout the country. There are many, many opportunities for our students. They get many interviews at many different academic and organizations throughout the country and end up matching at places that they're choosing. And we have fun celebrating that day. I think I'm going to end with that. And then I think we're going to move to questions now. Okay.
Stand up there because the Zoom camera is kind of between the balloons. That's right
Okay.
here.
All right, so we're gonna stay here. I guess so. Yeah.
I can do Phil down.
Okay.
Did you?
Question about the rule, like many electives, we do more than one. We have Spanish and something else.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I will, even though she just told me that, it's helpful to have a reminder. So the question was around the pre-clerkship electives. These are electives you may be taking in the first and second year. Can you do more than one? And the short answer is yes. There is a limit to how many you can do based on really just trying to make sure that you achieve the appropriate balance in your educational goals as well. You can get credit for up to 2, basically, in short. There's some combination of, like, depending on how long they go, some of them are 4 year, some of them are longitudinal and last across the curriculum, and some are, for a single year or a single summer. So there's some differences there, but 2 is the number.
Hi, good morning. My name is Frank Stewart. So I know that the Renaissance curriculum was a large undertaking. So are there any other plans or proposals for change in the next 45 years that would affect this?
Yes. Oh, did you want specifics? Yeah, the question is, the Renaissance curriculum was a big sort of paradigm shift of our curriculum. Are there other plans for more changes? So we make sort of smaller course corrections and improvements every year. And actually a big part of that is student driven. So we didn't talk at all about student feedback, but we, in the pre-clerkship phase, we incentivize your feedback by making it a very small part of your grade. So we assign a quarter of the class per day to evaluate, or per week to evaluate the lectures in small groups of that week. And then we do focus groups at the end of every week. And then we have you do end of section and end of course evaluations. And we take all of that feedback to make changes in the courses. So for instance, even that multi-system course that I talked about, which is the last course of the pre-clerkship phase, that used to be a tiered graded course. And now based on that feedback, it is pass-fail so that students can really kind of get the most out of that. And many of them are already into step studying at that point already. There's lots of other examples I can give you, but we make changes all along the way so that we don't have to make a big sea change again in the next 5 or 10 years. You have catch box down there.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
My question was about the curriculum. Is there a research requirement for students?
The question was, is there a research requirement for students? There is a scholarly project requirement as part of your Foundations of Research and Critical Thinking course. So most of the students will accomplish that by doing research. There are a couple of other ways that you can do it without doing a sort of a specific research project. You can write a grant, you can do some other different scholarly projects, but there is a scholarly project requirement.
And I'll add that that's one of the ways that many folks help to define, refine, or contribute to their narrative, mission, and vision is there's so many opportunities on this campus for research. Finding a mentor and a project that align with your goals can be another very fulfilling piece of the curriculum.
We have one in the back and then we'll come over to you.
Hi, yes, thank you so much for your presentation. I wanted to ask, in terms of the block exams or kind of your mid-semester exams, would you say that they're written kind of individually as the professor that teaches them, or is it kind of written uniformly towards our bigger exams like STEP?
So the question was about the exams in the pre-clerkship phase of the curriculum, the block exams, as opposed to the step 1 exam. So we have actually a committee called the Assessment Review Committee. So the questions are written, individual questions are written by the lecturers, and then are vetted by the course director or the section head, depending on which course you're in. And then they go through an assessment review committee, which tries to make sure that they are all the same type of format as USMLE exams. So typically they'll have a clinical vignette or some sort of a STEM, and they'll have one best answer as opposed to, multiple best answers or all of the following are true except type of things. We don't allow any of those questions. So there's a committee that makes sure that there's consistency among the questions.
Hi, my name is Michelle Hack. This is a question for maybe Dr. Tom, but anyone is welcome to answer. So 1 in 5 medical students is a son or daughter of a physician, and that's not even counting for aunts, uncles, grandparents, brothers, sisters. So my question is, how do you advocate for applicants, either at your school or your admissions department, who never grew up with any exposure to medicine or any kind of those resources to kind of end that generational nepotism?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't want to speak for the admissions team, but I will certainly shout out and give amazing kudos to the admissions team. They work so incredibly hard to provide that holistic review of your applications. And I know from experience, because I've sat on that committee and I've worked with this team, they spend hours looking through each of that, and they are trained to look for those things and understand those opportunities. So they're doing already an incredible job of bringing that variety of students from different backgrounds to become a part of this class. And then once you're here, that is a big thing that Dr. Rivas and I, the rest of us in OSA, and really everybody work toward, to be able to provide those opportunities for all students through those one-on-one meetings that start right away when you come in and occur at least yearly, but with an open door policy to return at any time. We help to identify at an individual level, what is your prior experience? What are some of the components, if you've heard the term of the hidden curriculum that you may or may not be aware of? How can we help you navigate those? How can we help you put you in touch with specific resources that may be most beneficial to you as an individual student? And I think through those are probably the major ways that we help to address that.
Hi, my name is Erica. Question. What exactly does the medical Spanish track look like? What are the classes kind of look like? Do you join the clinical work in Spanish, and you have to have a certain level of Spanish to be on that track?
Our course director is coming up.
Thank you for that question. I will repeat the question. It was just about medical Spanish. If we could go into a little detail on what the course looks like. It is a 1 year. It's one of the shorter pre-clerkship electives that students can participate in. We try to combine both in classroom didactic, sort of basically like a interactive, a little bit of presentation, but mostly ideally a lot of interaction, where we're really focusing on teaching you the language that you need to be able to have a meaningful medical encounter with a patient. And so it very much mirrors what you're learning in English in practice of medicine in one of our courses in the core curriculum that all students take, where you're learning how to take that thoughtful history from your patients. You're learning how to perform the physical exam. In medical Spanish, we're marrying a lot of those skills in Spanish. So you're learning how to take that history in Spanish with a systems-based approach, and also how to talk your patient through the physical exam. There is also a community service learning component. So our students also do rotate through clinics throughout the city that are serving Spanish-speaking patients. For that reason, primarily, you have to have at least an intermediate level of Spanish already to be in the course that's for credit. But we do also have a student-run sort of sister medical Spanish course, not for credit. There's no sort of like required hours of service learning, et cetera, that has a lot of similar content. So there really is a medical Spanish opportunity for everyone who's interested, even across multiple levels of proficiency. I'll stop there.
Hi, my name is Matt Eckhardt. So I live in mine, I saw that I'll do a lot of approaches all throughout the greater Baltimore area, which you think makes your University of Maryland programs that unique versus other medical schools? Like, do you think provides different opportunities that just can't happen anywhere else?
Yeah, so the question was about the clerkship curriculum, and we have a distribution through a number of our system hospitals around the area, and what makes it unique. So I think that there's a number of things that make it unique. I think sort of the downtown medical center, the flagship, is a pretty unique place as a quaternary care center that's attached physically and many other ways to the shock trauma center. I think it's a very there's almost no place like it in the whole world, especially when you think about trauma care and you think about some of the incredible work that our transplant surgeons have done and things like that. Some of you may have read about the xenotransplant and the face transplant from a few years ago. So I think there's a lot of really cutting edge science happening at the downtown center, but there's also a lot of incredible work being done at some of our other hospitals that our students get to rotate through. So places like BWMC, places like Capital Regional, where they see even though they're geographically not that far, it's a very different population of patients. And the medicine varies a little bit from that as well. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for students to do really cool things like rotating out in places like Hagerstown and places on the Eastern Shore. Even when I was a medical student here, I spent 2 months on the Eastern Shore with a doctor who we would go to the hospital and see his inpatients in the morning, then we go to clinic all day, and then we go back and see his inpatients in the evening. And that's a practice plan that is very unique in this day and age. That was a different day and age, I guess, when I was in medical school. But you kind of get the message. There's a lot of unique things about it, and I think that Maryland, for those of you that are from Maryland, it's a state that has a lot of differences, whether it's the population, whether it's the climate, whether it's the geography, and we try to take advantage of all of those things.
Yeah, I'll add that I came here to do my internal medicine residency training, and since I've been here for many years, I went to med school around the same time as Dr. Martinez. I have been involved in recruiting medical students, residents, and fellows. And one of the things that drove me here, and one of the things I tell all of the future learners at the University of Maryland and University of Maryland Medical Center, is that we are so excellent at clinical training. That is the piece that I think drove me here, that led me to stay, that makes me really confident in recruiting all of you to come. And I think there's 3 incredible components to that. We have amazing learners who are here to, again, be that best version of physicians they can be. We have an incredible patient population throughout the state of Maryland, and particularly here in Baltimore, that we can learn from and learn with. And our faculty and residents and fellows are all here because they're passionate about similar things and are incredible educators. And I think I think anybody, including myself, are just lucky to learn in this environment.
Let's do like 2 more questions. Good morning, my name is Nina Gersten, and I really appreciated hearing about the clinical Spanish track or the medical Spanish, and then in addition to how you're integrating clinical work in the community. And I'd really love to hear more about how you are intentionally helping medical students build relationships with community members and how that influences their practice as physicians.
Sure, yep. One of the most important ways that we do that is through our practice in medicine course. So within that course, everybody has a service learning opportunity and expectation that really allows us to be start right away from week 1 or week 2 of medical school to become a part of that community. Many of those are in local schools nearby, but there are a variety of different service learning opportunities. We already heard about some of those in medical Spanish. All of them are meant to engage with the community. That's a huge part of University of Maryland, Baltimore as well. They have a community engagement center that our students are very involved at working in and volunteering and providing service for our community partners that live here in this neighborhood in West Baltimore. And, you know, one of the things we're so proud about our students for is that they're constantly looking for more and more opportunities, both for service and engagement in our local community. And each year, I think, with that long list of opportunities and activities that we have for students, both as part of the curriculum and as volunteer, some new group of students or multiple new groups of students comes with bringing to us new opportunities and ways to get involved and sharing that with their classmates. So I think that is a big part of who we are here at the University of Maryland School of Medicine.
Specifically for Dr. Tom. So I know you mentioned that some student peers were students before residents need to give feedback on their MSPs. I'd love to learn more about how that works. Like, are there specific meetings with students? Is that part of like the transition to residency?
Yes, can you repeat the part where you said the feedback piece? What, I missed that one piece. That you said.
Do you have specific one-on-one meetings with students to give feedback on their MSPs?
Oh, yes, okay. Yes, so the question was about the shepherding process from transition from medical school to residency. And I will say that there's a huge component of that that is built into the curriculum, right? So getting your skills ready. In fact, we have a course called Transition to Residency that helps to provide those skills. But I think the question was really developing your application and presenting the best possible application. That application includes multiple components, so not just the MSPE. It includes your CV basically as part of your application, a personal statement for you. It mirrors some of the things that you're putting together and going through right now, letters of reference. But the MSPE and your transcripts are a big part, and they're intended to design really summarize this incredible 4+ year journey that you go on. We do have one-on-one meetings that are mandatory, as well as a series of workshops and optional meetings with each student in their 4th year will be assigned or able to choose one of the OSA deans to work with on this process. And we build, you know, in many cases, it's someone you've been working with as that first invite to come into our office in 1st year. So you've had a relationship with them over the last 4 years and they've gotten to know you. But in this intense time frame of like putting together your application, we start to develop a different level or a different layer to our relationship and meet multiple times to help guide you through that process. We give you feedback on all sorts of things. We hosted a session last night on workshopping your personal statement. We've hosted sessions on putting together your CV or building your narrative and brand, as well as providing feedback around the and working together with the MSP. And I think that's the last question, right?
All right, I want to say a huge thank you to Dr. Catherine Robinette, Dr. Sandra Quezada, Dr. Joseph Martinez, and Dr. Carrie Tom, and Dr. Kristen Rivas. Thank you so much. I hope that you all have learned a lot of information from these sessions. So we're going to move into the student panel. So we're going to bring our students in. So we're just going to take a few minutes to set up, and we'll be right with you for the panel.
Right here. We're just going to try to be loud so everyone can hear us because this is our Zoom microphone. But I am thrilled to have you guys meet our fantastic medical students who are on our panel today. I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves, then we'll take questions from you guys, because I think our medical students are one of our best resources and probably can give you the best picture. They're the closest to where you were, so they can give you a good picture of what it's like to be here and maybe some tips or tricks that they found helpful in applying. We'll have everyone introduce themselves, and then as questions come in, if it apply, we'll try to have 1 or 2 students answer each question just to give everyone some talking time. So you can go ahead and start.
Hi. Hello.
There you go. You got it. It just takes some time.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Kylie. I'm a rising M2, so I just finished my first year at Maryland. I'm in the MD PhD program, so any of you guys who are interested in research, feel free to send questions my way. On campus, I'm involved in student council, so I'm the student council president. I'm also the president of Women in Medicine, and I'm currently doing my first research rotation in the neurosurgery lab this summer. So nice to meet you all.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's cool to recognize a few faces in here. My name is Aiden. I'm also a rising second year medical student here. On campus, I'm just an MD for MD PhD. On campus, I am on our class government. I serve as a curriculum representative. Happy to talk to you all about that if you're interested. I'm also on the boards for our LGBTQIA+ health interest group, as well as the vascular surgery interest group. And then this summer, I'm working under the PRISM program, which is a mentoring student-based program to do research. I'm with the Division of Vascular Surgery.
Hi, my name is Giselle. I'm also rising M2. I'm in the MD program. I'm involved in also city council. I'm also co-president of Students of Choice. I am also for the Latin American Student Association and
I'm Yasmin. I'm a 4th year medical student here at Maryland, and currently working doing an elective in dermatology. I'm looking at applying to dermatology this fall, so that's exciting. Finally almost done. Yeah, so you guys can feel free to ask any questions about 3rd year, rotations, all of those sorts of things, preclinicals, application cycle, all of that. You guys have questions on that?
I'm a 4th year as well. I'm going to be applying into neurology. Right now, I'm dedicated for step 2. So far, I've been involved in Latino Medical Students Association, the Internal Medicine Interest Group, Medical Spanish, and did some research in some neuro.
Hi everyone, I'm Jake. Also a rising second year medical student, and I am involved with APEMSA, which is Asian Pacific Islander Medical Student Association, and also I am an internal medicine interest group. And this year I'm doing research on AI and diagnostic radiology.
Okay, so what questions do you guys have? You can raise your hand. Go ahead.
My name is Carly, and I am a non-traditional. So with that in mind, I was curious if any of you are non-traditional medical students, and so what did University of Maryland do to help sort of support your goals as you move back into academia?
Okay, so the question, I'm just going to repeat it for the Zoom people, was how does Maryland support non-traditional students? I don't actually know. Are any of you non-traditional? Did anyone take any gap years? Oh, you're non-traditional? That's okay, you can answer. We're flexible here.
Hi, my name is second year. I'm just taking that as Jake. I'm looking at AI project for. Just answer your question. I'm not traditional. I'm two masters. I was first a little bit slower, and then it was an master's.
Oh, but how did we support you once you got here? We're not. I mean, I don't want to pressure you.
There's also a non-traditional student as well, so that's a few there.
Thank you.
To speak to the academic portion, so I also took 2 gap years in research at MH, and then I came back to medical school. Our first course is foundation, so it's probably like the first 2.5 months or so, school, 2 months of school. It's true pass fail, and they really give you a lot of resources and a lot of time. They don't try to overwhelm you from the start, so they want you to get back into the groove of studying, sort of help you with study skills. They do a lot of sessions on how to just get back into it. Even if you're coming right from school, medical school is completely different than undergrad, so you have to learn a new way of studying, like sort of learn what works best for you. So they help you a lot with the transition back into academic lifestyle. And we have a lot of resources as well. There's a woman named Tess Gillis, who's an academic support specialist. She's amazing. I didn't go until like 6 months of the school, and I wish I went earlier. It's just people that are helping you like to, I guess, sort of get a grasp on all of the data that's going on here and really learn what works best for you, what doesn't. So.
Great. Any questions from the back?
Just to add to what you said, also I think foundation is pass fail, so it's like low stakes, kind of easy to make school, rigor and all that, so that has something to help. And then something that I did, I took 1 gap year, but there was the PSP program that was offered to me, so I did that, and I forgot exactly what it's called, something summer program, that people can be offered to by the university, by the school of medicine to do. It's like a month long. They kind of like teach you the basics in medicine and kind of learn a lot of stuff that you kind of learn in foundation already. So it's kind of like a sneak peek, kind of get you started and stuff like that. So if you have the option to, they offer you the PSP program, I would do it. It's a really good way to use that in.
All right, questions in the back.
Hi, my name is Allison, and this is probably specifically for Kylie because I'm applying to PhD. I know that sometimes the disconnect, especially, and you're not there yet, but when you go kind of back into med school from the PhD portion, and even in the beginning, sometimes there can be like a disconnect between the communities of MD, PhD, and the medical classes that you're in. So I just was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that and how those communities are the same or different, or how your experience has been with that so far.
Yeah, so during our first 2 years of medical school, we have a research class. It's called MTM. It's molecules to medicine is what it stands for. So to keep you up to date with like research techniques and stuff, it's really low stakes. You're assigned 1 paper throughout the whole first year. You work with a partner and you present on that paper. The rising M2s will actually pick the topics for the course. So it'll be like relevant topics in science. This year we did like transplantation. What else did we do? But we have like 4 topics typically, so that will keep you research minded a little bit. Also, you do your rotations after the summer of your first year and your second year. In terms of when you're in your PhD in clinic, we have a longitudinal like clinical course, so that'll keep you like really relevant with your clinical skills. And then before you enter your M3 and M4 year, you'll do sort of like a boot camp about like all the relevant things you need to know before entering back into the clinic. It is a transition no matter what school you go to, but I'd say we have a really strong sense of community across years and really great mentorship here. So the older students are always willing to help you and like let you know what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and that's a really great support system to have when you're going through the transition.
Great. Any questions up near the front?
Yeah, so.
You're fine.
All right.
We can hear you here, so I'm going front back, so.
Okay. So I'm not part of the MD PhD program, but I am interested in doing research. I know even though my undergraduate school was small, I struggled to find labs. Did you guys think it was really easy to find a lab? And is it like supportive? Like, what do you think?
So the question was about finding research mentors for MD only.
Well, I was always interested in dermatology, so I felt like the home dermatology program was always very open to any research project I wanted to work on or helping out with certain things or even my ideas that I wanted to do. So I didn't find an issue there. And also like working in other things like really interested in public health. So I worked with some people in the public health department. So I think it's very easy to find mentors and projects, especially, if you come up with something that you're interested in, that's always a plus. So I didn't find any issues.
That it was like so easy. It was so much easier to do that. We had to do an FRCC, which is essentially you have to do a project while you're in medical school. And when you're in your foundation course, they'll go over to like how you have to do it, Then they actually sent me a list of mentors, and it was like over 100 different people. They told me the projects, they told me where they're working and everything. And you can just kind of look through and message them, like, hey, I'm interested in this. And then you are interested in a certain field, like I was interested in neurology, so I just messaged the director of the neurology course and asked her, like, hey, you know, research. She also sent me an Excel sheet showing all the research going on in the department, and reached out to them. It took me like 5 minutes to like figure out what project I wanted to do.
I would just echo what they said. I was interested in vascular surgery when I got here. I went into a surgical panel that was being held that one faculty member went up and just said, hey, I'm interested in this. Is there any chance we could have a discussion about it later? She was like, not only do I want you to be involved in research, I want to mentor you. I want to make sure that you get a COR. I want to make sure that I can like help you with your career goals. So like, let's get this going. We're working on one project now. We'll try to add you to a couple other projects, see how you do. Like, it was so much more than just like, hi, this is my name. It's been incredibly helpful. It stinks that in undergrad you have to like scale 4 mountain chains and collect 3 gems. And a research spot is a lot easier.
I would also say for people who are like really shy about reaching out and like dread like writing those emails to people, a lot of times faculty will reach out to like they'll like send a mass email to the class listservs and say, I need 3 students on this project. Stop, email me. Connect with me. Sometimes they don't even ask for your resume, they just kind of trust that you're capable, because I mean you got accepted to medical school, you have some kind of research. So yeah, like I was always at student wanting to project this summer, and then I emailed somebody, set up a meeting the next day, and was doing 2 student projects this summer. So it is pretty straightforward.
Excellent. Any questions from the back?
Hi, I'm Abigail, and I had a question about the application process. Is there something that you wish you knew or did? And is there something that you thought you did really well or helped you during the application process?
So the question is what you did during your medical school application process that, or something you wish you knew.
I'm sure you've heard this a million times before, but as soon as you start getting secondaries, it can get a little overwhelming. So I would start pre-writing where you can and really take the time to think about yourself and think about what you want to convey on your application. A lot of times people could come across very similar in their writings, like what's unique about you and what do you want a medical committee to show? You don't have a lot of characters to show it. So make sure you get right to the point and really do a lot of self-reflecting before you go to actually write your personal statement, go to write your secondaries, and make sure you make yourself strong a little bit.
I'd also say that the biggest piece of advice that I got that was most helpful is that past a certain point, you're going to fill out your secondaries, and it's going to be a lot of waiting. And that's probably the hardest part of the application process. Do not get on student.network and do not get on Reddit. The people on there are terrible and they're lying to you. And if you do have a 4.0 and 528 MCAT, you're asking what your chances are of getting to medical school, don't do that. So the best thing that I did for myself was like not opening any of those types of websites during those couple of months, being able to like get back in touch with the hobbies that I was really interested in that I kind of put on pause while I was filling out the applications. And that helps to maintain like my mental health throughout the process, because it can be, it's a tiresome process.
Good. Any questions up front?
Kind of on that last point, how do you guys, or where do you guys find your time outside of medical school classes, any research or extracurriculars that you do? What are things that you do in the Baltimore area that you really enjoy?
So the question is what they do to enjoy and how they find time to do that.
And there's a lot of things to do. Our Baltimore, since Baltimore geographically is perfectly located right between New York and DC. So that trip is really easy to make or DC. For example, I signed up for a half marathon. For you. But I think medical school, you learn to manage your time well so that you are really efficient in your day, that you can take time during the evening hours so you can learn.
I think Maryland has a really good work-life balance. I think part of that is we only have classes from 8 to 12. So you are done like your required programming at 12, you can still get a full study day in and have 6 to whatever time you go to bed to yourself. So that's really great. Med school's hard, so you definitely want to take time to yourself. A few classmates made a Bolo beach volleyball team. I wasn't very good, but it was really fun. We went every week. It was such a great time. where now that baseball season started, we've gone to a few baseball games. People in the Baltimore area really love the Ravens and the Orioles, and a bunch of your classmates probably will as well if you come here. But we definitely find a lot of opportunities to get into the city, and I feel like my social life has not like it's almost flourished a little bit in med school because you made it to where you want to be. You have the support system to actually make it through med school, and now you get to enjoy yourself a little bit.
Good. Any questions in the back?
Yes, good morning. So my name is Freddie. More on the lifestyle kind of choices where you kind of live, like do you use public transportation to get to school? Do you bike? Do you drive your car? Is parking free? Obviously. What are you doing for getting to classes?
Yeah, so the question was about how they get around the city or the state.
I think the first question that you need to ask yourself is, do you want to bring your car? If you have a car, and if you don't have a car, that should also shape where you live. If you do have a car, there are people that live in upwards of like 30, 40 minutes away and commute into the city every day. I do not do that. So I live about a 10 to 12 minute walk away from school in Pigtown, which I think is a really great option for me. That way I don't have to pay for any sort of public transportation. I have to admit, we do have a bus system here, and then UMB has its own bus system as well for some people that live on the specific routes. But in terms of like a metro or the light rail, I don't know that people use that at all really when they're commuting to school. I think I would say that the majority of people live within a walking distance of campus, but you have to figure out what your price point is because what might be close to the hospital may not be the most affordable option to you. The last piece I would say is that there is on-campus housing. I don't know anybody that does it. I'm sure there are people that do it. I chose to live in a townhouse with 2 roommates. We're also in medical school right now, and I love that option. I think it's kept things affordable. Again, I can walk. I have my own privacy, and I have just enough distance from the school where if I'm done for the day with studying and I don't want to look at anything anymore, I can go turn it over.
I think there's a lot of great neighborhoods here in Baltimore to live in. And, I also live in Pigtown, so I guess I would it's the best. And it just really depends on this money you want to spend. If you want to have any roommates, I live with my partner and we have dogs, so we want a house to ourselves with a backyard. But I know people who are living in Federal Hill who have 2 roommates, 3 roommates, and live in a much larger house, and usually take the safe ride or they take the shuttle over here, and it's only about 15 minutes in the morning. But most people actually walk, so you can live in downtown as well, and there's also like a 10-minute walk. Paytown's another 10 minutes walk. So there's a lot of great options. Some people live further out in the county, or even Locust Point, which is a more family-oriented neighborhood. So it's really depending on what you want to do, and there's definitely something for everyone.
So I live in a condo in the harbor, so a little bit away, but I speed walk, so it takes me like 15 minutes to get here. So I like it. I like that I can walk when I want. I can take the bus. I actually do sometimes use the Baltimore City bus system. I don't know if it's metro or whatever they call it, but I use it sometimes and it gets me here in like 5 minutes. I like it. I can also use the school, the UMB bus system, which is also great to get me in 5 minutes. So I think it's very accessible within the city to get wherever you want to go. And then also, like in 3rd year, when you're going on rotations and stuff like that, maybe some of the rotations, most of them would be like in our hospital here, like in the different clinics, but some of them might be in different places. Like we have like St. Joe's and some other places that people will go to, like maybe 20, 30 minutes kind of drive to like on traffic and stuff. So some people get cars in 3rd year, things like that, or carpool, whatever they have to do. So that's also something to think about. But I think it's definitely accessible to come to camp, like especially for the first 2 years, like walking, driving, or whatever is very accessible. I know someone who like lived at home and 20 minutes, 40 minutes drive, some people, and they make it work. So whatever kind of works for your price point.
I will say the party line is that you kind of do need a car because even your practice of medicine facilitators can be off campus. So you don't necessarily need to drive every day, but we generally, as a school, recommend that people have access to a car, not necessarily drive every day.
There are opportunities to get into the city, and the school does exactly if you do like POM or service learning into the city, but I haven't really met anyone that has had an issue where like their partner didn't have a car to drive them. Like your class will get very, very, very close. So I didn't know someone, she didn't have a car, she was my service learning partner, and now we're really great friends and we get lunch and stuff like that. So people are always willing to help you, and even the people who didn't have a car the first 2 years, they were definitely able to make it work with their classmates.
Okay, question up here. Go ahead.
I wanted to add on to transportation. What about living? I know like some universities, like they introduce you to like, I guess first year community right away, and then you guys like get with each other and can figure out who you're living. What is that like here?
So the question is, how do you get to know your first year class?
As soon as you're accepted, there's a Facebook page. So on that Facebook page, they'll typically make a document of people who are looking for roommates, where they're looking to live, and there will be a bunch of questions. So you try to find someone compatible to you. So it'll be like, what's your living style? Do you like having company over? Do you have any pets? So they'll create a document, and you could typically just reach out to people. I decided about going to Maryland sort of later, and I still found a roommate. We live like right near campus, and we have a great time together. So it's pretty, they facilitate a lot of opportunities for you to meet people in your class virtually. I don't know if that's a little different now that COVID's becoming, the like social restrictions are becoming a little more relaxed. But they'll do that, and they'll also do like summer meetups and stuff at you too before you start your first year.
Freshman from medical school is an introduction to medical school where we have a lot of social activities planned out, so everyone can meet each other. So I don't think that people have trouble becoming friends. That's the other thing.
Great, a question from the back.
Hi, I was just curious, I think question more for you, but if you're planning to or hoping to like match into residency, especially in competitive residency, what do you do during, your 4 years and med school to kind of distinguish yourself from like a student?
Yeah, so the question is, if you're looking to match specifically into a competitive residency, what are some things we offer to help you prepare for that, or how the students have done that? Dermatology, I feel like, yes. Yeah.
Question. I think definitely, you want to be coming into med school thinking that you want to do a very competitive specialty, you have to kind of have a game plan. Like I came in, quickly got acquainted with the derm department, like the program director and all that. She became my mentor, start asking about projects, start shadowing. You have to be very, proactive in getting these kind of opportunities so that they know you, at least one person knows you, so that, at least your best chance to do a home program. A lot of these very competitive specialties. So I think starting off your first year like that, or just having the department know you and everything is a really great way to start. A lot of these competitive specialties need a lot of research usually, so getting involved in research projects, reaching out to people, they might not get your home program, but reaching out to other universities you might be interested in, finding people, just, reading stuff on PubMed and being like, oh, I like this project, this is kind of what I'm interested in, emailing the PI who did that work and asking, hey, I'd like to follow up on your research, maybe we can have this next time or whatever. So you have to be very proactive, just going into competitive specialties, and then hopefully along the way, you'll find other people going into the same field as you guys can like work together on different projects, stuff like that. But definitely grades do really come first a lot of times, so make sure you're staying up on your grades. We have tutors here at our university. Tutors like in the, second, third, fourth year that will tutor years below them or even within the same class. So definitely using the tutoring system, they're really, really awesome, smart people. So you can learn from them. And then also Testgillis, I think as well, can help you with that academic planning and all those sorts of things as well. So there's definitely a lot of resources, but again, you have to be very proactive in setting yourself up for success.
Hi, my name is Jules. I guess it's a bit more personal, but what made you choose UMD University of Maryland School of Medicine? And so far, what have you learned, or what has medical school, taught you so far that you're grateful for? And also, in case you came in without knowing what you want to do, how did you figure out the path?
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I think the question was like sort of what made us choose Maryland, what have we been grateful for throughout our time here so far, and I guess what's really unique about our school. I'd say the biggest pulling factor about our school is the community aspect. I haven't necessarily seen many schools where you have such a great community, and that's across like all ranks, whether it's students, faculty. As a student, I was really nervous coming in. You're like one of 150, but the faculty really make a true effort to get to know you individually. Dr. Martinez, who spoke to you earlier, we had happy hour at his house, a few of us, and him and his wife made us drinks and food. So they really get to know who you are, like as an individual. And medical school is going to be hard no matter where you go. It's just a whole different journey. And you really want people who are going to support you along the way. And I guess want to see you succeed. And I found that to be very true here at Maryland.
So I'm out of state, and I think like 60% or 50% of the students here is in state. So for me, you know, I have that extra added cost, so it's really difficult for me to make a decision here. Just because I did have substances in state. But you know, I just toured both places, and the students here just seem so much happier, and like they actually cared about what they were learning about, and I really loved like the schedule. The schedule for me was like one of the biggest pros of University of Maryland, like having your entire afternoon to yourself. There's only 2 hours mandatory every day. And yeah, I think like just like I feel like people who were really passionate about what we were doing enjoyed it. That made it worth it for me to take the person.
Yeah, for me, I'm in state and I wanted to stay in state, so I'm happy that, you know, that worked out. But one thing I love about Maryland is that all the people that in the University of Maryland system, like the hospital and the school, they really care about Baltimore. You know, there's a sense of community here, very passionate about improving, you know, the lives of the patients and the community here in Baltimore. You can kind of tell that. In some universities you may go to, it's not really the same. You don't really have that drive, that kind of public health awareness, you know. So I really love that, and I really, you know, cherish that being here.
Just to ask the out-of-state, you can, as an out-of-state student, apply for in-state tuition after the first year. And so that made a huge difference for me. Not a lot of schools actually allow you to do that. I also got into some in-state schools, but I already lived in Baltimore. And then after I found out it's applied to in-state tuition, it was great knowing that we made it a lot cheaper, obviously. So that's considered.
Good. You can go ahead since I called on you.
Kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, like if you don't know, like how University of Maryland kind of supports finding your passion and
Yeah, so the question is how Maryland supports finding your career track.
I guess looking back at it now, 4 years, you know, you really don't have to make a decision until pretty late into the game, unless you're going to something very competitive. But even then, you're thinking of something like ortho or opto, you can, you know, start laying the foundation for those research projects and making connections. But you know, decide to do something like neurology. That's not very competitive. You know, you just learn about it during your curriculum, you learn about it in your clerkship. Let's say you go through your neurology rotation, really enjoy it. You can reach out to the people that you that taught you during that, and just see, you know, can I shadow you, can I, you know, visit your clinic and so on. And they're more than open to that. And then once you're in your therapy rotations, you still have time to actually pick what you want to go into. So I wasn't sure about neurology during then, I was so between that and internal medicine. So you have a lot more time than you think to actually pick your specialty. And you should really explore everything, you know, as you're going through medical school. You know, you can start eliminating things like I eliminated surgery right away that you didn't want to know. But you know, it's a lot more less pressure than you think.
Other one that I mentioned is that University of Maryland has a program called Exploring Careers in Medicine, ESCAM. It's a program that you sign up for, and basically what it is, it gives you the opportunity to have targeted shadowing in specialties that you're not going to be able to rotate in your 3rd year, or that you could choose for your electives in 3rd or 4th year, which I think is really helpful. So basically, you create your own like preference list, and then they compare it to what's available, and they'll match you over the course of every couple of weeks. You'll go for several months. Get to meet different faculty, not to mention the fact that you can reach out to faculty at any time and ask to shadow, but I think this one's especially helpful because they set up the entire process for you. So you get to explore a little bit of, not just do I like this specialty, but maybe do I like procedures or do I like thinking through a diagnosis? Do I want to be in the OR, do I not want to be in the OR? Like those kinds of questions are really helpful in beginning to narrow down the list.
Just another thing to add, like if someone were to come and like find that they want to do a very competitive specialty, like in the third year or something like that, and like they don't have enough time to get things together, you can always take a gap year, which is a research year, or whatever year you want to really kind of do. A lot of people do research years, just working with someone and like putting out a lot of papers. It has to be a pretty productive year, but that's something that a lot of people do. They find out they want to do like something very last minute.
I had a lot of shadowing experience coming into medical school, and when you're a medical school student, especially at Maryland, it's like a completely different world. So you're not just like watching from the back, like being silent, like you're actively helping physicians do the work that they're doing. I shadowed OB-GYN, never had any experience in OB-GYN, and I actually like scrubbed in on a C-section and helped deliver a baby. So these physicians and faculty members are like really eager to give you hands-on experience. There's not a limit of opportunities. The only limit is like your personal time and well-being. But any specialty you want to get into, I showed up to a neurosurgery happy hour, and within like 2 hours, I was added to all the grand round emails, and I could shadow like a list of 5 neurosurgeons whenever I wanted to. So even you might be scared to ask, but as a medical student, they really want to help you in your journey. So you don't need to be nervous at all. There's a world of opportunities for you as soon as you get accepted.
It's perfectly normal if you want to go into it, because I think the majority of the people, at least in my class, don't know what they want to do. Or me, for instance, like what I want to do. Radiology, other than what I want to do, medicine, the other day, it just changes, and I think that journey just never ends up with like literally, I'm a former diagnostic radiologist, which is good. And someone actually has swapped right before they submitted the rest. So that happens.
All right, one more question from the back, because we need to get you guys to lunch and get you guys a break, because I know you have had great attendance for a long time.
Yeah, jumping back to your comments, what was the most valuable experience that you contributed to the decision? You think that was necessary, that help you subjectively to have the success?
So the question is, what during your undergraduate years kind of motivated you to do medicine, and how did that help you once you're here?
So when I was in undergrad, so I was a Spanish major, only a Spanish major, and I worked as a medical interpreter for a lot of my time in undergrad, and I really, really loved that opportunity. I thought it was fantastic being able to like, I consider like being able to speak another language a superpower. So it was cool to be able to like employ a superpower and help people, but it was also cool because I was getting the regular experience in medical clinics, getting to see what care looks like when you primarily don't have insurance. And I think that was important because it was something that at my undergrad university had like a tailored shadowing program, but it was in a hospital, primarily with patients who were insured, primarily for small issues. And it was really easy if you didn't look for it to just avoid the types of care that come in free health clinics. And I think that was important understanding social determinants of health and health equity, language as a barrier to care. And that is a lot of how I focus my application when I apply to medical school, and it's a lot of how I focus the type of care that I want to see here as well. And so if you have any opportunity to be a medical interpreter, I highly recommend that. If otherwise just shadowing in community or free clinics, I highly recommend doing that as well.
My most impactful experience in the similar area clinical research study, but I think aside from the research, like I really enjoyed speaking with the patients I was working with. It was a woman in Southeast Michigan, the Detroit area. Like a lot of these groups are really underserved, and just like really trying to understand like their contraceptive use and what their experiences in the medical field. And I think something that I found really valuable when it came to application season, interview season especially, is that was something that like, if I had not gotten any award, any recognition, any nomination, anything, it's something that I could talk about for hours and something I was really passionate about and that really comes through, especially to your interviewers. It's really easy to tell when somebody does something, totally check the box or like, just something that they do to you and something that's something you really was passionate about. So I think like, you hear a lot of like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, make sure you do X, Y, Z. I think just like spend your time doing the things that you care about the most, and even if it's not directly medical related, I think it will really shine through that.
Great. And I think Ms. Kareem definitely wants us to get up there to have lunch. You guys we will be there, faculty will be there, and students will be there. So I know you guys have lots of questions. Oh, Dr. Casado.
Everybody walks away.
Oh.
Can we do a big selfie together? We're gonna do this. Hold it, get forward.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, the ones that- Yeah.